Hey guys, in this section we're talking about good fences, and there's going to be a part one and there's going to be a part two, just because there's a lot that we have to talk about. And what I mean by good fences is that any good home, any good school, any good playground is going to have good fences that keeps all the children safe inside, that keeps all the family inside safe if we're talking about a house. When we put up fences, we're keeping everything safe that's inside. And so when we're talking about the incarnation, we need to fence up boundaries. And what I mean by that is that everything on the outside is not what we're talking about, is not God, is incorrect to say. But everything inside is more of a mystery. So when we're talking about the incarnation, the insight part, we're talking about God fully man and also fully divine. And all this, the fully man stuff, we can explain that the best we can because we're human ourselves. We know how a human lives. We can talk about God as man fully very easily. But this divine part, right, this fully divine part, now that's a little bit tougher because we don't necessarily know who God is. We don't know all the mysteries of God. And so therefore, the church for about 400, 500 years after Jesus took a lot of time to figure out this mystery of the incarnation. And all these different theologians kind of came up and said, well, I think Jesus is fully human and fully divine is like this. And the church was like, wrong. Or I think Jesus is like this. Wrong. Okay, so and they would take their time and think about this. It wasn't just an immediate wrong. It was a let's think about that, theologian. That's a good idea, but let's think about this, what you're saying, and then they would talk about it, and then they figured out, okay, what you said was that's not actually who Jesus is. This is who Jesus is. So we're going to talk about all these different knots of who Jesus is and set up these good fences. And these knots, they eventually became what we call heresies. Heresies are this big fancy word for saying you're speaking lies about who Jesus is. So I think it's really important in this next section to talk about who Jesus is not. Because if we answer all those questions, I think you can understand what the house in the middle looks like, in the middle of that fence. Okay? So in this first section, we're going to watch two videos. One talking about those different heresies in a sketch video. One from Bishop Robert Barron on the incarnation. And then I'm going to have you answer questions on that. And then I'm going to have another section below. It'll be called Good Fences Part 2. And in Good Fences Part 2, there'll be different readings that you can read from. There'll be a Word document that I'll put together of all these different heresies and what they said wrong. And then at the end of that, you can answer questions. So there's two sets of questions for this and two sections for this, just because it's a lot, and I want you to take your time going through it. So it might take you a little bit of time to go through both of these sections, but this is the foundation of how we learn about what the incarnation is talking about who God is not, instead of talking about who God is. And we can do that in other sections, but for right now, let's start with the knots, okay?